Today is Friday, October 17th, 2025. Welcome to This Week in Natural Refrigerants News, where we recap the top stories on naturalrefrigerants.com. This podcast is generated and read by artificial intelligence and may contain pronunciation errors.
We're your hosts, ATNMO, and the articles for today's podcast were organized by naturalrefrigerants.com's managing editor and written by its writers.
You can find links to each article in the show notes.
Right, so we've got quite a mix this week. Some regulatory uncertainty in the U.S., some environmental policy debates over in Europe, and then some really interesting commercial applications globally.
Yeah, definitely a packed week. Let's start with that EPA situation in the U.S. The technology transitions rule reconsideration. The timing seems to be causing a lot of
anxiety.
It really is. So the proposal came out October 3rd, but comments aren't due until November 17th. And the original rules deadline is January 1st, 2026. It's cutting it very close.
Okay, so what's the specific worry? If they don't finalize this reconsideration before January 1st,
Right.
what happens? Well, the original much stricter GWP limits, 150 or 300 for remote condensing units in food retail and cold storage, they just automatically kick in.
Temporarily, at least.
Temporarily, yeah. The proposed change pushes those really low limits way out to 2032 and puts in higher interim limits for now 1,400 for food retail, 700 for cold storage.
And Cully Whitman, the consultant, really flagged this. Imagine being an end user or manufacturer. You might comply with the strict 2026 rule. Invest heavily.
Only to have the rules change maybe weeks later to something much less stringent.
It creates massive uncertainty. It makes planning almost impossible and can just freeze investment, which isn't what anyone wants.
Exactly. Okay, so staying with regulations but moving across the pond, there's this ongoing discussion about TFA trifluoroacetic acid.
Right. The breakdown product of some HFOs. Pan-Europe, the Pesticides Action Network, they put out a report.
Yeah, and they're directly challenging how the chemical industry's own TFA task force is interpreting some of the animal toxicity studies.
What are they saying specifically?
Well, Pan-Europe argues the task force kind of downplayed findings from rabbit studies. They pointed to fetal abnormalities, issues with eyes and skeletons.
Okay.
But the really stark contrast is in the proposed drinking water limits. The task force suggested 294 micrograms per liter.
Which sounds high.
It's way higher than some national standards. Like in the Netherlands, the protective limit is just 2.2 micrograms per liter. That's a huge gap.
Wow. Yeah, and this matters because the amounts aren't trivial, right? Didn't the article mention Germany?
It did. Estimates suggest HFO 1234 Fischef breakdown is the biggest source of TFA. They're annually something like 2,000 metric tons. So, yeah, the stakes are pretty high.
Okay, let's pivot from policy to practice. Some interesting applications hitting the news. Data centers, for one.
Yes. Colo's new DK5 facility in Copenhagen. It's actually a retrofit moving away from HFCs, and they've put in water-cooled R290 chillers, propane, in a data center.
And it's designed for serious computing power, right? High-density stuff, AI workloads, liquid-cooled racks over 30 kilowatts.
Exactly. And when you're dealing with that kind of heat load, efficiency is just critical.
So what are the benefits they're seeing or projecting?
Well, the big one is free cooling. They expect to get full free cooling for around 7,000 hours a year. Basically, anytime the outside air is below 16 Celsius or about 61 Fahrenheit.
That's most of the year in Copenhagen, I'd imagine. Huge potential for energy savings, keeping that PUE low.
Definitely. And that theme of efficiency carries over into commercial refrigeration, too. We saw a great case study from Thailand.
Ah, the Golden Place supermarket. They installed R290 display cases from AHT using a water loop system.
And the results were pretty impressive. A 12% reduction in annual electricity consumption.
Which translates to, over 143,000 kilowatt hours saved per year? Compared to their old R404A system.
Which is great, but the really eye-popping number for me was the refrigerant charge reduction.
Oh, yeah, that was massive. They went from 750 kilograms of R404A
down to just 19.8 kilos of R290.
That's a 97% drop. It totally changes the risk profile of the store, not to mention the environmental impact.
Absolutely. They estimate it cuts CO2 equivalent emissions by over 3,000 metric tons a year. Just a huge win all around.
Okay, so one last story to round things out. CO2 heat pumps making waves internationally.
Right. This company from China, LYD Energy Saving Technology, they've got a significant number of CO2 heat pumps installed, 140 in China, but also 50 internationally.
So they're exporting this technology quite successfully. Where are these international units going?
All over, it seems. They sold 250 units to a partner in the U.S. specifically for water heating. They've got systems in Germany supporting district heating.
And the New Zealand example was interesting, too.
Yeah, that one caught my eye. Smaller air source units like 8 and 14 kilowatts being used in the dairy industry there.
Producing pretty hot water, right? 85 degrees C.
Exactly, for sanitation and also doing waste heat recovery. It just shows how versatile CO2 can be in different applications and climates. Really flexible technology.
Okay, quite a range of stories this week, then.
Definitely highlights the momentum despite some of the regulatory hurdles.
This is AT.
And MO, and this has been the Week in Natural Refrigerant News.